For decades, one of the world's most powerful industries knew its product was deadly. They knew it was addictive. But instead of telling the public, they launched one of the most sophisticated, most successful conspiracies in modern history, a conspiracy to hide the truth, to manufacture doubt. This is the story of that conspiracy, a playbook of deception that, honestly, changed everything.
Okay, let's just jump right into the deep end. Look at this quote. This isn't from some anti-smoking activist. This is from an internal memo at a huge tobacco company, Brown and Williamson, all the way back in 1963. While they were out there telling everyone that smoking was just a harmless habit, a personal choice, this is what they were saying behind closed doors. They knew their business wasn't tobacco, it was selling an addictive drug. This one sentence really tells you everything you need to know. So, how did it all start? I mean, how does an entire industry decide to go down this path? Well, it all kicks off in the early 1950s. That's when the first credible scientific reports linking smoking to cancer started to bubble up into the mainstream. And, well, the industry realized they had a very, very big problem. And here's where you see just how calculated their response was. In 1952, this article, Cancer by the Carton, hits the newsstands. People get scared, and for the first time ever, cigarette sales actually drop. Now, did the industry panic and pour money into health research? Nope. Their first move was a PR move. The very next year, the CEOs of all the big tobacco companies get together for a secret meeting at the Plaza Hotel in New York. The goal? Not to find the truth, but to control the story. And out of that meeting came this masterpiece of public relations, a frank statement to cigarette smokers. And this right here, this was the heart of their strategy. The big promise in their frank statement was the creation of this thing called the Tobacco Industry Research Committee, or TIRC. Publicly, they said all the right things. We'll fund independent research. We accept our responsibility for the public's health. It sounded amazing, but behind the scenes, their own documents later proved the TIRC was a sham. Its real purpose was to muddy the waters, to fund friendly science, attack any real science that was damaging, and create the illusion of a scientific debate to keep people smoking and feeling safe about it.
And this is where the story gets really, really dark. Because while this whole public relations machine was out there creating doubt and confusion, their own scientists, working in their own secret labs, were confirming the absolute worst fears about their products. I mean, just read this. This is from a 1972 Philip Morris report. They weren't seeing themselves as selling tobacco. They knew they were in the drug delivery business. The cigarette wasn't the product, nicotine was. They were literally thinking of the pack as a storage container for a day's supply of nicotine. It's so blunt, they knew exactly what they were selling. So, what do you do when your own research proves your public statements are complete lies? Well, you bury it. And this memo from an industry lawyer spells out the strategy perfectly. They decided to weaponize the legal system itself, to use attorney-client privilege not as a shield for justice, but as a shovel to hide the bodies. And here's exactly how they built that firewall. It was this cynical four-step dance. Step 1. Any research that looked dangerous got funneled into so-called special projects. Step 2. The scientists on those projects now reported directly to the lawyers, not to other scientists. This was the key move because it allowed them to do step 3, stamp every single document, every memo, every lab report with attorney-client privilege. And the final chilling step? When anyone, regulators, the public, anyone, asked about this research, they just denied it existed. Simple as that. But here's the thing about a lie that big. It's almost impossible to keep it secret forever. Eventually, that wall of silence started to get cracks. And it wasn't regulators who broke it open. It was a few courageous people on the inside who just couldn't live with the lie anymore. Meet Morrell Williams. He was a paralegal, and his job was literally to go through these secret documents we've been talking about. He was horrified by what he was reading, so he took this incredible personal risk and started smuggling thousands of pages out of the office bit by bit. These documents became famous as the cigarette papers, and they were the first real massive breach in the industry's fortress of secrecy. And then came Dr. Jeffrey Wygant. Now, this was a huge deal. He wasn't a paralegal. He was the vice president of research for Brown and Williamson. After he was fired, he went on 60 Minutes and told the world that the CEOs, the top guys, were knowingly lying, committing perjury really, about the addictive nature of nicotine. Having an insider at that level break the code of silence was just a devastating blow. Thanks to people like Williams and Wiegand, the lawsuits that followed finally blew the doors off the industry's secret archives. And the sheer scale of what they were hiding is, well, it's just mind-boggling. Over 14 million internal documents were eventually forced into the public record, an ocean of evidence detailing decades and decades of deception.
So, with the truth finally out there, the legal and financial reckoning for the tobacco industry was, as you can imagine, immense. But maybe the most important thing they left behind wasn't just the damage, but the actual playbook they perfected for everyone else to use. First, let's talk about the money. In 1998, to finally settle all the lawsuits brought by 46 different states, the big tobacco companies had to agree to pay $206 billion. It's a number that's almost hard to comprehend. It was, quite literally, the price tag for their decades of lying.
And the courts were just as brutal. In a landmark 2006 case, a federal judge found the companies guilty under RICO laws, the same laws used to prosecute the mob. She called them a racketeering enterprise. Her words here are just scathing, saying they acted with deception and without regard for the human tragedy. The conspiracy was no longer an allegation. It was now a legal fact. So, what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, the tobacco industry left us more than just a public health crisis. They left us a playbook, a step-by-step guide for any group that wants to confuse the public and delay action. You fund science that's designed not to find answers, but to create doubt. You create these respectable-sounding institutes and councils that are really just front groups. You go on the attack against any real independent scientists. You use your lawyers to hide the truth, and maybe most importantly, you constantly shift the blame onto the individual by talking about personal responsibility.
You see, this story isn't really just about tobacco. It's a lesson in how truth can be twisted, how doubt can be sold, just like any other product. And that brings us to the big question for you. Now that you know the playbook, now that you can recognize the tactics, where do you see this exact same playbook being used today? Think about it.